Hello, welcome to another IELTS video. In this video, I would like to share with you 10 ways you can prepare for your examination without having to spend any money, which I'm sure is a nice change for many of you, as I know IELTS students often need to spend tremendous amounts of money in preparation for their examination. If you find this video helpful, you may wish to visit my website at englishryan.com. I was also hoping that if there's any extra tips that you feel have worked for you in preparation for your examination, that you may wish to share them in the comments section of this video. So let's get to our first tip. My first of 10 tips is for students to get into podcasts. There are literally tons of free podcasts available online, and many of them focus on IELTS prep. Now, if some students don't know what a podcast is, it's a recorded audio stream that you can sign up for, and often a podcast will issue new lessons or new audio listening files every single day. So if you're perhaps if you're commuting back and forth to work, this doesn't mean that you're studying for your IELTS exam needs to stop. You can listen to podcasts and continue studying during these sort of idle periods of time. Now, a podcast that there's many good podcasts, but one I'd recommend is the one that's offered by the British Council. So you may wish to search their website to find it. It's called the Professionals Podcast, and often they include many pieces in preparation for the IELTS examination. The other good thing about them is they also provide a transcript of all the lessons that they offer, which I think is very helpful to students. So that's my first tip. Get into podcasts. I think that's an absolutely vital step for students hoping to do well on their examination. Now, my second tip is to recite speeches. Now, I know this might seem kind of unorthodox, but there are many recorded speeches available online that you can download. And in addition to these, you can download the script for each speech. And so these might be historical speeches. I have a picture of Winston Churchill here. It could be a current speech, such as the State of the Union address that's given by the President of the United States every year, or even something maybe entertainment related. So here you see the opening speech at the Academy Awards. Now, a lot of teachers suggest that their students simply listen to these speeches, and I think that that's helpful, but to really benefit you to the full extent, I would suggest that you get a transcript of the speeches and mimic the speaker as they're speaking. So that's, this could involve a lot of play, pause, rewind, play again, pause, play again, respond, repeat what the speaker is saying, repeat, and you will find that your language will become much more fluent, and I guarantee that you will learn a ton of new vocabulary following this strategy. So that's number 2, recite speeches. Number 3, I suggest students get into Western songs. Now, some people might disagree with this and think that there's too much slang in a lot of Western songs, and perhaps that's true in a lot of the newer stuff that's out. But if you look at some older English songs, particularly from bands such as the Beatles, I think you can learn a lot of English colloquialisms and various phrases and word usage that I think could act as a helpful tool to you. Now, this would also involve downloading the lyrics and following along with the songs, but I think that this is also a good step and a good study strategy to help you master some new areas of the language. So that's number 3. Now let's move on to number 4. Okay, now this is a tip that was given to me by an IELTS student that I had, and I think it is an excellent, excellent strategy. And this student had impeccable speaking, and I had asked him at one point, "Why is your speaking so good?" And he told me, he said that he watches movies, and I said, well, you can't just be watching movies. Lots of students watch movies, and their speaking is not nearly as good as yours. And he said that he downloaded movie scripts, and he would choose a character in the movie, and he would role play that character as he watched the movie, which I thought is a very creative, a very, very effective way to practice your speaking on a variety of topics. So I pass on this tip to you, that perhaps if you're one evening you're planning to practice your speaking, and perhaps you don't have a speaking partner, and maybe it's a Friday night, and you're a little bit tired because you've been reading books all day. Maybe just get a movie, download the script for that movie, and follow along. Read after the characters. Rewind, read, repeat, rewind, read, repeat. Do this over and over and over again, and once again, I guarantee that your fluency will improve. Excellent, excellent tip that was given to me by a student in Dubai. Okay, tip number 5. Start a language log. Now, a language log is not the same thing as a vocabulary list. Personally, I think vocabulary lists are often a huge waste of time. I know that maybe that goes against what perhaps your other IELTS instructors have taught you, but I find students that just make a simple list of words, and beside that list they put a translation of each word into their native language. It's a big waste of time, because what happens is students, they might memorize a single word, but they don't memorize how to use that word. So to give you an example, recently I had a student that came to me, and I guess they had learned the word honesty, which they were kind of a basic level student, and they weren't using it properly. They were I can't remember how they were saying it, but it was very difficult to understand what they were saying. And when I looked at the way that they were studying, honesty was one of the words that was in a big long list of vocab that they had. And so I told them, where did you see this word for the first time? And they said, well, I saw it in a book I'm reading. And I said, well, why didn't you write down the context? Why didn't you write down the phrase that this word was presented to you in? And they said, oh, I knew what the sentence meant, but I just didn't know what this word meant. Well, I think that the strategy that we should be following here is that we shouldn't just be writing the words down in whatever, logs that we're making of new parts of the English language that we're learning. I think here the best thing would be to include this in a phrase, such as, so if the phrase was maybe his honesty was his best trait. Oh, sorry, I've got a mistake here. Okay, his honesty was his best trait. So when we see this, if this was the phrase we saw in the book that we were reading, then we should take down the whole phrase. Write the entire thing in your log. Don't just write the word honesty. And when you go back to this log later, you can see in context how the word is used. So my tip number 5 is to start a language log, not just a list of vocabulary words, but a real log about how words and phrases are used. Okay, tip number 6. Write letters and emails. I once had a student who was very proactive they were proactive in environmentally related issues. So they were very into the whole global warming phenomena that's going on. And they would write a letter or an email every single day to an organization somewhere around the world, an English organization. And one good thing for them was that they were training for the general examination. So writing letters was a part of was what they were supposed to be practicing anyways. So this was, for them, it was good practice. And often the letters that they wrote to people were replied to. So not only are you practicing your writing when you write letters to people, but a few days later, maybe a week later, you might get a response from somebody. And um, I think that that's helpful to kind of get you more engaged in the language and how to use it to communicate with other people. So you don't have to write to environmental uh, companies and agencies, but perhaps you could write to to some organization that you feel connected to in some way, or that you feel is interesting, and then you'll receive some reply, I'm sure, back. So my tip number 6 is to write letters and emails to English organizations. Okay, let's move on. Tip number 7, record yourself. I'm always surprised in my classes when I ask who's been recording themselves when they're practicing to speak, and nobody raises their hand. It's absolutely imperative that you record yourself. Listen to your sound. You'd be surprised how often you can pick out little mistakes. I know many of you that are studying at a higher level know instantly when you hear another person who's speaking English but is not a native speaker. Right? When you listen to them, you can hear it. You can hear their accent. And so that you can hear where they're mistaken in certain areas. So record yourself, listen, and check to make sure that you feel that you're saying things as strongly as you can. You may also try to record yourself, saying perhaps a speech, like we said before, and then you can listen to yourself saying the speech and compare that to the original speaker, and to see perhaps where there is areas, perhaps where you should be putting more stress in certain areas, or other areas where you're not pronouncing things quite as accurately as you should be. So record yourself. That's tip number 7. Tip number 8, language exchange. Very important. Now, this is often a difficult thing to do, especially I know some of you are perhaps not living in an English-speaking country, or perhaps you're in some part of the world where nobody speaks English. For example, I've been to many cities in China where I don't think anybody speaks English at all, or very, very little English. Now, if you're the one student in that city who's studying for their IELTS exam, of course you're going to find difficulty performing a language exchange. But there's a number of tools that can help you. For one, if there's a university in your area, you may wish to contact them, contact their language department, and see if there's any organization or anybody that they can hook you up with that can help you find a language exchange partner. And if there isn't, leave your name with them and try to find people that you can communicate with. I think that speaking with another person, especially speaking in this case with a native English speaker, is something that cannot be replicated in any other way. You cannot learn that from a textbook. You cannot learn that by watching BBC. It's absolutely vital. Now, if you really can't find anybody, you might want to try a tool like Skype. And if you speak a language that's in demand today, perhaps such as Chinese or French or Arabic or Russian or Japanese, or a variety of other languages that native English speakers may be interested in learning, try to find somebody that would be interested in exchanging languages with you. I think Skype is a wonderful tool for that. Okay, so that's tip number 8. Tip number 9. Read for enjoyment before bed. I know a lot of students that are reading their Cambridge-issued IELTS material, and they're reading other IELTS-related material, and then before they go to bed, they read more IELTS-related material, and they're bored. And I don't blame you. I would be bored too if I was reading that all the time. I think that relaxing doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stop studying. You can just start reading more material that you're interested in that is also written in English. So, for example, some traditional English stories. I have the book Gulliver's Travels up on the screen here. These sorts of stories, they're fun to read, and they will present to you perhaps some colloquialisms you weren't aware of, or certain phrases that you didn't know. If you want to keep up with current events, maybe read an English newspaper or a popular magazine. I would suggest avoiding magazines that perhaps are a little bit too visual, maybe with too many pictures, like those British tabloids or American tabloids for that matter. But I think magazines such as Wired or science-related magazines or medical-related magazines, I think these are great tools if you're interested in that sort of thing to read during your relaxing time. So read them before you go to bed. Tip number 9. Finally, tip number 10. Learn to play Scrabble. Now, I guess I don't really mean to go... I mean, you could, if you wanted to, go out and buy the Scrabble board and learn how to play Scrabble. But I think that even just, if you were on the internet and you wanted to take a 5-minute break from studying, don't watch some waste of time video that you find on YouTube. Watch a video perhaps about Scrabble. It's fun. You'll learn some new words. It's a great way to increase your vocabulary without wasting time while you're taking a break. I think there's a number of videos on YouTube actually. If you just type in Scrabble, and you will find people that are playing the game, and you can look through the words that they've put on the board, and perhaps some of them are new. So my tip to you when you want to take a 5-minute break is to watch a video about the game Scrabble. So those are the top 10 tips that I can give to you that do not cost any money at all. And like I said at the beginning of the video, if you're interested to share your own, please leave your comment below in the comment section of this video, and perhaps we can start a bit of a dialogue about the methods that we're using to study for our examination. I hope that video was helpful. Good luck in your studying.